Good evening, everybody. Okay, cool. Right. Well, firstly, good evening. Welcome. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. I hope that no one's been too badly affected by the recent weather. So firstly, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Just going to kick off with a couple introductions. So I myself, my name's Chris Freeman. I work at Breedr as a product manager, and I would like to take this opportunity to allow my two lovely guests tonight to introduce themselves. So I've got both Sarah Pick from AHDB Beef and Lamb and Charlie Beaty, third generation suckler farmer with me tonight. So Sarah and Charlie, if you want to do a couple quick introductions. Sarah, if you'd like to go first.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So yes, my name's Sarah Pick, and I work in the Beef and Lamb Knowledge Exchange team at AHDB. So I really look after our strategic and monitor farms, as well as the Maternal Matters campaign, which I'll talk about in a little bit.
So I'm Charlie. Like Chris said, I'm a third generation farmer from North Warwickshire. We're a very traditional mixed farm, so beef, sheep and arable and contracting as well, with the arable and contracting being our main business.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much both. Okay, so a really kind of quick agenda then for tonight, rough plan. So obviously, as you can see from the screen, the whole theme of tonight's webinar is focusing on calving and fertility, and the whole point of this webinar is part of a new kind of breeder-led initiative called SucklerClub. So I'll be doing a bit of an introduction into what SucklerClub is. I will then pass on to a couple presentations from both Sarah and Charlie. Sarah kind of focusing on looking at how we can improve herd fertility, and Charlie just introducing her suckler business. And then the second kind of half of the session is we'll really launch into the main theme of tonight and that is calving. So there'll be additional presentations from both Sarah and Charlie, and I'll be doing a bit of a demo of the Breedr app to show you how what features and reports are available to our suckler farmers during this spring calving time. Please, I encourage you. This is a very relaxed, very informal webinar. So, if you've got any questions, please fire them into the chat. Try and pick them up as best I can, and we'll try to answer some of your questions. Again, fire them at both Sarah and Charlie. We'll aim to run for about 45 to 60 minutes. Again, depending on discussion. The more discussion, the better. But then the longer it will be. Again, if any of you are out there are on your Twitter or Instagram and you want to do a mention that the webinar is on and try and get more people involved, that'd be great. We've got people behind the scenes so that if anyone does the most creative post, then we might fire a Breedr Gilet away. So there's an incentive for you. So the first kind of part of tonight is for any of those people out there that maybe are new to Breedr and don't know quite what Breedr is all about. I'd like to just spend the next kind of couple minutes just giving a bit of an overview of Breedr as a company. So for those of you who can't quite remember when lockdown started, it was March 2020. I know that because that was also the time when Breedr was launched. And Breedr was launched with the primary aim of supporting livestock producers in terms of helping drive efficiencies and profitability by equipping them with the tools to do so. And effectively what that tool is our primary product, which is the mobile and the web-based app. And its primary role is for on-farm data capture. on farms, there is a ream of loads of data points that if caught and if utilized, if interpreted, can actually drive a lot of value to livestock businesses. And really that's where, as you can see on the screen, that we at Breedr have this trifecta of services in performance, trading and cash flow. So if you imagine, in the middle of that triangle, kind of in the cow's stomach is at the core of Breedr is that data capture. And what that data capture allows is it allows us to provide these three services. So the performance analytics, which is what we will be focusing on mainly tonight, is taking that data, interpreting it, converting it into value-driven insights, for users to then make data-driven decisions off. And that's where, later on we'll see tonight in terms of our reporting, that's where all of that data comes in. We put it into reports that is then presented back to the farmer to use to evaluate the performance of their business. The trading element. So effectively what you're doing is when you are recording data, so data is just information, so it's medicines, it's weights, it's bulling, it's PD tests. What that information, what that data is doing is actually it's creating quite a lot of value for your animals. So what we have also provided as part of our services is an online trading platform that allows you to sell your animals, based on their data. You can prove their credentials, that obviously drives value. But also, if you're buying animals, then it increases the confidence that you're buying, quality animals, because whoever is selling them using Breedr, recording the performance, improving their worth. And on proving their worth is our third service in that triangle is our cash flow options. So effectively, what farmers have got in terms of livestock is that they've got live assets. They are an asset to you, and the more data that you are capturing and recording against those animals, against those assets, is actually what you're doing is you're increasing the value of those assets. So for a company like Breedr, actually what that allows us to provide our users is a service that can allow us to release cash flow by advancing new money based on those assets. So effectively what can happen to a lot of livestock farmers is they are selling all of their animals maybe in 1 month out of 12. Well, that obviously leaves quite a big hole for the other 11 months in terms of cash flow. If you're using Breedr, if you're capturing data against those animals, you're proving that the worth of those assets, then we can release cash for you. So that's a new service that's available from Breedr. It's not a financing or a lending service. It is different. So, but again, that is the power of data, and that's what these kind of options can offer. So, Breedr as a company, yes, of course we have competition. Everyone has competition, but what makes Breedr so unique is our competitors are specific for trading. They're specific for animal performance. They're specific for cash flow. What Breedr does is it actually encompasses it all together into one package, into one network, all encompassing. So, that is just an outline introduction of Breedr and what we do. Now, just kind of carrying on really from that focus on the top of that triangle, the performance analytics, is introduction to SucklerClub. So what effectively is SucklerClub? So we have very recently launched SucklerClub. It's a Breedr-led initiative with the aim of supporting our suckler farmers. We know that fertility effectively is the cornerstone of any suckler business, and the aim of SucklerClub is to provide our suckler farmers with a much greater understanding and a deeper insight into the fertility status of their herd. And effectively, how are we doing that? Well, tonight is a perfect example of how we are doing that, because what we are doing as part of this initiative is trying to bring the industry together. So, you know, Breedr have got the tools to offer our suckler farmers in terms of that data capture. So you can capture your own on-farm data, you can interpret it, you can gain your own fertility status and understanding of fertility status. But then it's linking with, you know, the likes of AHDB, who can then provide, you know, farmers with the background technical knowledge in terms of, right, you know, I've got these fertility KPIs. Well, what value do they bring to me? But also, you know, how do I then improve? So, you know, that's great where, you know, we'd like to invite AHDB along to support in that respect. But also, obviously, you know, at the heart of SucklerClub, at the heart of Breedr, at the heart of everything that we do is our farmers. So, you know, this is why, you know, really happy to have Charlie on board as well, as a, you know, live, living and breathing suckler farmer herself, who, you know, we'll be sharing her experiences. So again, you know, learn from the technical side of the industry, but also learn from the practical side of the industry as well. So how effectively does SucklerClub work? Well, SucklerClub, we've designed SucklerClub to be divided into 4 key distinct periods of a breeding cycle. Farmers are free to join at any time, so you don't have to be at the beginning, at the end, you can come in the middle, so it's not a problem. And effectively, for those 4 distinct periods, what we will be doing is we will be providing guidance on what tasks to focus on, what are the key performance indicator targets that we should be looking into, how we can use Breedr to capture the data and create those KPI targets for ourselves. And then obviously quite importantly is, you know, right, how can we improve on this? How can we take this data and then learn from it and drive our business forward? So those 4 distinct periods, as I mentioned, the first one is service. So we start a breeding season at the point of service, followed by the pregnancy diagnosis. That then kind of follows on to calving, and then we end a breeding cycle when the calves that were hopefully conceived during the service period, when they are finally weaned. And so effectively, what are the resources that SucklerClub is providing? Well, as you can see on the screen, this is our breeding calendar. So as you can see, it's got all of the 4 main periods of the breeding season, including the objectives, the tasks, the breeder features available, and then obviously those key KPIs. And what we will be doing is when a user signs up to the to Breedr and states that they are a suckler producer, we will send one of these. It'll be in a big A2 version in the post for you to stick up on your wall. We have got the equivalent for autumn calving herds. So you know, you can either have one or the other, or if you've got a split herd, then maybe let us know, because they're printed front to back. So yeah, maybe let us know and we'll send you another one. You can have both of them up on the wall. As you can see within the calendar, there's a couple QR codes in the top right and at the bottom, and that just provides extra online resources to help you learn a bit more about the features, or there's links to AHDB resources that can help you. Charlie, obviously, she'll kind of expand on it a little bit later, but Charlie will be sharing her journey on social media. So again, you can follow her in terms of resource. And we're also doing a number of technical blogs as well that we will be releasing for those key time periods. So really, SucklerClub is, to encompass it, it's trying to, support our suckler farmers and help them try to realize the importance of, capturing data, evaluating business performance and and also quite importantly is benchmarking, not just against industry targets, but also against their peers. So that just leaves me to again, thank everyone for coming along tonight, and I would like to take this time now to hand over to Sarah. Again, Sarah, just I'm driving the presentation, so just give me a prompt of when to go onto your next slide.
I will do. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so good evening, everyone, and thank you for tuning in tonight. My name is Sarah Pick, and as I said, I work in the beef and lamb knowledge exchange team at AHDB. So for the next 10 minutes or so, I'm just going to talk to you about the importance of suckler fertility. I actually undertook a Nuffield scholarship in 2019, looking at this topic. So I'm going to try and weave in some of the things that I saw and some of the learnings from that as well. So if you could move on the slide, Chris. So I always like to start by looking at our performance against other countries, and this graph is a really great visual for doing that. So this graph shows the profitability of different suckler enterprises across the globe. So basically the green bars, the dark blue bars and the light blue bars are costs. So they represent costs, and the dark blue dot, which you can see on there, is returns. So in an ideal situation, you would like the dark blue dots to be higher than the bars. And as we can see in the likes of Brazil and Canada, they're doing just that. So their systems are quite profitable. If we move to the right-hand side of the screen, we can see the UK systems. And as you can see, we're not performing as well, and often our returns don't even cover our cash costs. So this really isn't sustainable. The other thing to notice is that our costs are significantly higher than the other countries. So this was something I wanted to look at as part of my Nuffield, is to see why our costs were significantly higher and if there was anything we could learn from other countries to try and lower that. If you could move on to the next slide, Chris. So as part of my Nuffield, if you could just keep pressing, because it shows where I travelled to. So I travelled, so I did some parts in Europe. So I went up to Scotland and across to Ireland, then went to Canada, to the US, to Brazil, and then yes, to Brazil, Mexico, Australia and New Zealand. So I did a real tour of the world, and my carbon emissions certainly weren't great in 2019. But what I really wanted to understand were what these countries were doing to ensure that their suckler herds were profitable. And I'll talk a little bit about what I found now. So if you could move on, Chris. Thank you. So one of my first visits as I set out on this wonderful tour was to visit Bart Lardner, and his photo is shown on screen now. And he's actually a research scientist in Saskatchewan in Canada, and his work focuses on suckler production. And what he said to me on that visit really hit home, and I suppose was really my light bulb moment. And he said that as an industry, we have become obsessed with the finished animal, when actually it's the cost of keeping the cow which dictates whether we make a profit or not. And he actually quoted a great piece of work, which was actually conducted in 1987, I think. My eyes aren't good, so that's 1987 or 1967. And that actually found that fertility was 5 times more important than growth rate and 10 times more important than carcass quality. So such an impactful statement, and really made me realise that it was the cow that really matters in this. So if you could just move on, Chris. So I thought, right, if fertility is key to this, I want to understand where we are as an industry currently. So I turned to BCMS records and did some number crunching, because I'm a bit sad like that. And what it showed was that actually 82% of beef cows produce a calf each year. So that means 18% aren't. Average age at first calving was nearly 33 months, and obviously that's well above the target of 24. And interestingly, only 30% of farmers are using EBVs to make breeding decisions. So are we missing a trick there by not using genetic information? So from that, I just want to give you an idea of what some of the systems were that these farmers were operating that I visited across the globe. So if you could just turn over the slide, Chris, thank you. So so these were a good example of some of the cows that I saw. I did see a lot of native breeds, so a lot of your Anguses and your Herefords. And this cow in the bottom right, she was kind of your typical Angus cow. So she'd weigh between 550 and 600 kilos. So quite a small cow, but quite broad across her pin bones. And I also saw a lot of composite cows as well, which are basically crossbreds to make the most of the hybrid figure. So this cow on the left hand side, she was called she was part of a beef booster breed. Now the beef booster consists of 3 different strains. There's the maternal strain, there's the terminal strain, and the heifer strain. And each breeder focuses purely on one of these types. And this herd that I visited here, they focus on the maternal strain. And superior cattle are identified through genomics. So it's not EBVs, they've gone one step further and using genomics. And actually only the top percentage of animals, according to their genomics, can be sold for breeding. So this maternal strain of cow was based on 6 traits of economic importance, and they were fertility, milking ability, weight, conformation, hardiness, and disposition. Now this herd that I visited were achieving a 93% conception rate within a 55-day breeding period. So that was phenomenal results. And to make it even more impressive is what these cows were dealing with. So this photo here, I visited them in August, and it would be about 30 degrees. And as you can see, these cows are living off not a lot, but look really well. And Jerry, who was the farmer, he told me that in winter it gets down to -30, and he doesn't supplement them until the snow gets up to their eyeballs when they're grazing. So this shows what these cows were contending with, and they were still achieving really good fertility. And I think that really highlights what you can achieve by having a really strong selection criteria. And then this heifer on the top right, she was a maternalizer cow. So she consisted again of Red Angus, Tarentaise, South Devon, Red Poll, Hereford, and Devon. And they were all chosen again for their particular traits. So they were growth rate, age at puberty, milk production, and percentage retail product. And again, really good fertility. So they were achieving a 94% conception rate within the first 48 days of the breeding period. So really phenomenal results here. And again, it's just all driven by selection and using data to select your best animals. So if you could just move on, Chris. So the other things that these herds were doing were calving the heifers at 2 years of age, and it's something I am so passionate about that I actually did a Nuffield farming scholarship on it. So when I started my scholarship, one of the first places I visited was the Canadian Beef Cattle Research Council. So I set off really enthusiastic about my topic, arrived there and explained that I was, looking at calving at 2, how we were going to make it successful in the UK. And they actually looked at me as if I had 2 heads and said, well, we've been calving at 2 since the 1970s. So that was a really big learning curve. And when you think of it, heifers really are the future of the suckle herd and a really important source of new genetics. How we manage them influences their lifetime productivity and inevitably how much money they make us. So calving at 2 brings a number of benefits to the suckle producer. So first of all, and probably most important, is the financial benefits. So you're much better off. You save about £600 per heifer by calving them at 2 rather than 3. And studies have shown that they also produce more calves and more calf weight over their lifetime and remain in the herd longer. And some work recently conducted by the stabilizers found that calving at 2 also reduces your carbon by 4%. So another great benefit by implementing this practice. So it's clear that by calving at 2, these countries are able to reduce their costs, providing a competitive advantage over us. If you could just turn the slide over, Chris. So what can we learn from this as an industry? Well, to me, my biggest learning was it's the cow that really matters. At the end of the day, 70% of the cost of finishing a suckler beef animal relates to keeping that cow for the year. So this is really where we need to focus. Other countries have obviously identified this and have a clear breeding policy for their females, which I have deemed has lent to the production of a functional suckler cow. And what's a functional suckler cow? Well, to me, it's one that calves at 2 and then calves unassisted every 365 days thereafter, weaning a live calf. They have low maintenance costs, and they also remain in the herd for sufficient time to cover their development costs. So it really made me think, do we put enough emphasis on how we breed our cows? Because after all, hopefully they're in the herd for 7 years and therefore can have a really big impact over that time. I think we've done a great job of improving carcass traits, including growth rates. However, as one rancher told me, 2/3 of the cost of that slaughtered animal relates to the suckler cow. So why do we raise cattle the feedlot wants? Next slide, please. Now, I know none of this is a quick fix or easy. Nothing ever is to do with sucklers. And that's why AHDB has set up the Maternal Matters campaign. And this aims to provide suckler producers with the knowledge and the tools to improve the maternal performance of their herd. So Maternal Matters focuses on 2 aspects of the suckler herd, improving herd fertility and also reducing age at first calving. So we have created a website, which is ahdb.org.uk/maternal-matters, where we have put lots of information on there about calving heifers at 2 and improving herd fertility. We also host a number of webinars and podcasts on this topic, all to help you improve the maternal performance of your cows. We also have regular articles in Farmers Weekly, so please do check those out. They are really useful, and we are hoping to follow heifers from when they're born right through to when they calve for the second time. So it's really practical, helpful messages. Next slide, please, Chris. So I bet you're thinking, yes, Sarah, all this is great, but where do I start? Well, in my opinion, the first step is understanding how your cows are performing, and calving is a really great time to do this. So have a look at your average age at first calving and how many calves are being born compared to those that you put to the bull or your PD figures. Once you have this information, it will then be much easier to make any changes required. Next slide, please, Chris. So I just want to leave you, if I've given you you're eager for more information about my Nuffield, my report can be found on the Nuffield Farming website, and I also did a presentation at the Nuffield Farming Conference, which can be found on YouTube. So have a look at that. Thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat or the Q&A. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Sarah. Yeah, it's incredibly interesting, isn't it? I think it's an incredibly interesting topic. I personally do have a question for you, which we'll get there. We'll get there in a minute. Please, anyone out there, there is one question already in the chat, but if there's any more, burning questions, now's your chance. So someone just made a comment just regarding obviously your travels, Sarah, and the inquiry is, what kind of age are beef producers out in different countries killing their animals, with kind of the suggestion that if they're older than 30 months, then surely growth rate is not quite as important. So was that something that you kind of explored as well?
Yeah. So the average age at slaughter will be roughly about the same as ours. But what was interesting was you had a lot of suckler producers that were just suckler producers. So they concentrated on their cows and they sold all the offspring as stars. Which they were, I think they were backgrounders or something like that. They have a different term, but then basically they all go to the feedlots. So these farms were focusing specifically on their cows to produce those stars to sell on to the finisher, who would then finish them at roughly 24 months of age.
Okay, so kind of in comparison with UK, suckler producers, like you said, that are producing a store animal, that's a lot more common practice than, again, it's still, fairly common practice, in the UK for sucklers to run them through to finishing. Is that not quite as commonplace out in places like the States?
No. So they tend to use, so the climate varies a lot in these other countries. So those that can grow grass tend to have your sucklers. They're then sent across to the intensive areas where they'll be fed cereals and finished basically in the feedlots, which we often see pictures of.
Perfect. Sorry, just got another question come through. So another question for you, Sarah. So what are some of the key maternal traits to look for in a cow? Is it physical, or is it behavioral traits, or is it kind of a combination of both?
Yeah. So it's a combination of both. Obviously, I'd always recommend that if you're looking to breed your own replacements, you use a bull with strong maternal EBVs. So that's things like your gestation length, your calving ease, direct and daughters, age at puberty and milk. So have a look at those if you're breeding your own replacements. I know sometimes that's quite difficult because we operate at smaller herds here. So if AI is a possibility, that's always one to go for. In terms of physical traits, a lot of the producers were bulling those heifers that were born in the first cycle of the breeding season, because when you think of it, they're the ones that are out of your most fertile cows. So it's kind of a good way of indirectly selecting for fertility. They also looked at things like feet, structure, and also really important to look at mom. So they wouldn't keep any heifers out of cows which had been assisted at calving or hadn't weaned a calf. and just trying to think of some of the, and obviously behavioural as well. So you don't want to keep any flighty animals. Interestingly, when I was out there, I went to a reproductive conference in Tennessee, and they were discussing a lot about the impact of temperament on conception rates. And actually those flightier heifers have lower conception rates, and when they do calve, they wean a lighter calf. So not only a flighty heifer is a health and safety risk, but it also impacts on production as well. So yeah, a lot there. But what I would suggest, which I'll talk about later, is that they are at least 65% of their mature weight at bulling at 15 months of age. So yeah, but it's all in my Nuffield report.
That's it. Yeah, it's good plug. I mean, actually, just another question that's just come through. You mentioned about, you know, the calving at 24 months obviously has quite a positive impact on longevity. Roughly, kind of what is the age that, you know, kind of mature suckler cows are culled out in, you know, other parts of the world? Are they, you know, is their longevity tends to be better or worse than the UK?
It's roughly about what it is here. It probably is a bit lower because they're a little bit more harsher. So anything not in calf after that short breeding period is culled. I went to actually a few producers, and they wouldn't keep anything that was over 5, so they wouldn't cull it. They would just sell it for breeding, because they said after that age the cow then starts to depreciate, and they'd rather bring in a new heifer that's obviously genetically superior. So it's just kind of different thinking, but I wouldn't necessarily say their cows wouldn't last as long as ours. It's just that they're maybe a bit more harsher at their culling policies than we are.
But we know, which again is perhaps, you know, looking at culling is actually another, and you know, it's another tool in the arsenal, isn't it? Because, you know, obviously genetics can have a massive impact, and, you know, selective breeding, but then obviously selective culling is, you know, that it's another way of improving the herd. So
that's it. And when you look at, you know, those BCMS figures that are presented, and only 82% of cows weaning a calf, well, why are those 18% still here? You know, it's those sort of questions. And I know, you know, I've got cows at home, and you can become very sentimental, but yeah, I think we can definitely be maybe a bit harsher with our culling policies here.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Okay, excellent. Well, I'll you know, thank you very much, Sarah, and you know, Sarah's got another short presentation again for us later, but I'm gonna kind of move things forward now, and bring Charlie back in. So Charlie is just going to spend a little bit of time now, just talking a bit about the background of her suckler business, and you know, where she is wanting it to go. So over to you, Charlie, and just prompt me again for your slides.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we are, like I said, a very traditional mixed farm for the area. The beef and sheep very much fit around the arable and contracting. We're tenants. We rent the farm. So yeah, with the arable and the contracting in particular definitely brings in the majority of the money. So the stock just fits nicely around it. So it's quite a low maintenance herd. Yeah, we're running 85 head herd of beef suckler cows. So they now are predominantly Simmental cross. We started the herd back in the late 1980s after getting out of dairy in the mid 80s. And we started by buying in dairy cross heifers from a neighbour. And it has taken us about until now. So that started before I was even born, and it's taken us about 30 years to actually get rid of the dairy in those cows. And we've been keeping our own replacements ever since. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head when we stopped buying in the dairy crosses. But yeah, we started breeding to a Limousin bull. Dad and uncle both decided that they were getting too old to be jumping 5-bar gates though, so we moved to an Angus. Didn't suit us so much, and we've settled on a Simmental for the past 12, 13 years now. And, you know, we really like the Sims. They are, they've got good maternal traits. They produce a nice calf. So we're not finishing our calves. We finish a couple for beef boxes every year, but the majority are going into the market as stores. And we do well with the stores, but heck, we definitely have a lot of work to do on efficiency. Like Sarah mentioned earlier about calving at 2 rather than 3. Our first calf is definitely nearer to 3 than it is 2. And that efficiency is something that we are very conscious that we need to work on now, particularly with the loss of BPS. It's ticked over nicely and it's fitted around everything else, but now isn't the time for things to be ticking over. Probably next slide, please, Chris. So plans for the future and working with Breedr. So like I said earlier, efficiency is our key focus. It's worked, and you know, it's very easy to just say, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it's not broke now, but it soon will be, really. So we know that we are much better off getting ahead of that and trying to get those wheels moving for improvement now. So yeah, we've been looking at a system like Breedr for quite a while. We've wanted something that is compatible between the 3 of us on the farm, so that we're able to use on our phones and we can all access, and we've just not really found anything that's suited us up until now. The Breedr app, we're finding, well, I find it quite easy. Dad and Tom getting there, so they're both enjoying using it now that they're getting their heads around it, so that's really, really good to see. And by using it, I'm really hoping that we will be able to identify where we need to improve. So like I said before, we do like the Simmentals. They've got good maternal traits, but we've got a lot of places that we can improve. And one thing that I am very conscious of, as we breed that dairy out, I'm very conscious of us losing those maternal traits that we have done so well on. So we very, very rarely have to assist, touch wood. A cesarean I don't know what to do with, so, and that's great, and I want to keep things that way. Like the last bull we bought was 3/4 Simmental and 1/4 blue, and that really scares me a bit, especially as we are keeping our own replacement heifers. And until now, we've just been selecting them by eye, very traditional, the way it's always been done. But yeah, there's no way that is the best way for us to be selecting them. And we really need to build up that data bank to be able to select them based on facts rather than what they look like. So yeah, that's probably, I've got a bit more to say, but I might leave that for the next bit, if that's all right, Chris. That was very flew through that, sorry.
Of course, no, that's fine. Is that your last slide, that one, is it? It was
I think I've got another one, but did you want me to speak a bit later, or did you want me to get it all in now?
I think, oh no, that's fine. No, that's okay. I couldn't quite remember what the next slide was, but no, that's all good. Thank you very much. It's really interesting, obviously, just to know from you know, a live farmer, really, and again, it's great to have you on board and to share your experiences. I think it's you know, it's important that as an industry we're sharing not just the technical stuff, but obviously the practical, you know, on farm stuff as well. So there aren't any questions that have come through quite yet. I do have one, so while I'm asking it, if anyone else has got any other questions, then please kind of fire it through. Charlie, just simple question, just kind of interested, really. You kind of mentioned that you were obviously looking for a platform that was fairly kind of compatible between obviously yourself, your dad and your uncle. So obviously Breedr being cloud-based, that I suppose that kind of ticked that box. But you seem to kind of suggest that maybe there was a little bit of difficulty, or not necessarily difficulty, but maybe you were easier to start using the app or to get your head around it. I'm trying to be as polite as possible here. Yeah, but okay, I'm just going to come out with it. Do you think there is a generation gap? Is there challenges to maybe training the older, I've said it now, I said the O word, or the older generation? Are there barriers? And if there are, then it kind of sounds like you're overcoming them. Have you got any tips or tricks, or what's your opinion around that?
I think so. I think the thing I found most helpful, because like I find it really interesting, and I quite like being able to just put the data down. Until now, we've always been very much pen and paper, and my uncle has had all of the cattle data on his computer, you know, pretty much on a spreadsheet on a very old dairy based program that we've been using for donkey's years. And with that, it's never been accessible to me. So if we're doing something with the cows, if you know, whether we're tagging calves or whatever, if we need to look back at something, it's, oh, we'll just get Tom, and Tom will look at it when he goes home for lunch or something like that. It's never been there for us to look at. So that's been a game changer for us, really. And you know, we don't have that much of a bank on there yet, but we've got, like, even just looking back on something that you did 2 months ago or something like that, so easy just to have it there. I think the biggest thing for getting dad and uncle both using it more has been getting them to just do it themselves. So if we've done something like, whether it be like today, they wormed some youngsters. We've just brought them in after they've been out all winter, brought them into TB test next week, and they've wormed them. And before, I'd have just gone on the app and dad would have gone, we've wormed them, and I'd go, that's fine, I'll put it on the app. And this time it was like, you do it, you register on the app that we've wormed them. And you know, it took a few minutes, and dad was like, oh, that was all right, actually, you know. And yeah, and he is keen to change. He knows that we've got to get better, and it's nice for him as well, especially with dad. Because he's not been the one with the information at his fingertips. It is nice for him to have that now. So yeah, it's just yeah.
it's just
new,
isn't it?
I don't really have any tips and tricks. It's just, you've just got to find something that suits. And so far, this has been pretty user friendly for us. So
yeah, perfect. I think again, it's new, it's different, you know,
and the system we've used has always worked. I say it's always worked. It hasn't always worked, because there have been a lot of things missed, and you know, you like a cow loses a calf one year, and we are too sentimental at home. I am very sentimental with the cattle. I love them. But yeah, a cow loses a calf one year, and you just turn her out and put her back with the bull, and we've missed it, and she'll have lost 2 on the trot or something like that, and you miss that kind of thing. But now, having it there on your phone, you can check straight away and you don't miss it.
Yeah, perfect. Charlie, a question has come through. A couple have come through actually now, but I'm going to just move on very quickly. We are going to stop at the very end of the webinar, and we will have a time for more questions. So I'll pick up those questions later on. So don't worry, I'm not ignoring you, but I'm just kind of conscious of time. So thank you very much, Charlie. So really, this part of the webinar now is just focusing really on you know, what is coming up for our spring calving herds, which is obviously calving. So I'm not going to talk much for right now. What the plan is for this section is I'm going to hand over back to Sarah, who again is going to kind of pick up from where she left off earlier, and just expand a little bit more on you know, particular KPIs around calving, and then I'll do a bit of a kind of whistle stop tour of the app, do a bit of a demo on some of the features and the reports, and then we'll finish off back with Charlie, just to kind of hear from her how she's preparing for calving, and then we'll open up the floor for questions and discussion at the end. So yeah, so Sarah, can I hand back over to you?
Thanks, Chris. So don't worry, I'm only going to chat to you for about 5 minutes. And what really I want to focus on just in this next part is the 2 calving objectives which have been identified by the Suckler calendar. So the first is age at first calving, as you know, is one of my favourites, and the second is number of unassisted calvings. And we'll discuss the targets and what we should be looking at. So next slide, please, Chris. So age at first calving. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about the benefits because I've already discussed that earlier. So obviously, as I said, it's an effective way of reducing your cost of production and also increasing that cow lifetime performance. Now, the target, obviously, for age at first calving is 24 months. And this really means that they need to weigh about 65% of their mature weight at bulling, around 15 months of age. And we really say that at 12 months, if you're weighing regularly, at 12 months, they need to weigh about 50 to 55%. So ideally, you're looking at them to gain about 0.7 kilos per day from weaning through to breeding. And that 65% is really key because that's a good indicator that they will have reached puberty and will be cycling. And some really interesting research that was done a couple of years ago that found that if heifers have had at least 3 cycles before they go in with the bull, you will get an increase in conception rates of 33%. So it really has a big impact. And we just want to make sure that those heifers are cycling before the breeding period. Another good way of checking the cycling is by getting your vet out to do a breeding soundness exam. What I said earlier in the questions as well, ideally, if you can, you want to be bulling your biggest heifers because they're probably more likely to have been born in that first breeding cycle. So will be out of your most fertile cows. So again, you're always selecting for fertility then. If age at first calve, if calving at 2 is something you want to have a look at, we have a really good manual called Breeding, Selecting and Managing Beef Replacement Heifers, and that is available on the website. If you would like a hard copy, just get in touch with us and we can post that out. But that goes into a lot of detail about how to move to a 2-year-old calving system. Next slide, please, Chris. So the other thing is assisted calvings. Now, assisted calvings result in an increased risk of stillbirths, calf mortality, as well as an increased risk of failure of passive transfer, which is basically how successful the calves are at getting the immunity that they need from the colostrum. And of course, it's a big cost as well. So obviously it takes a lot out of you, so you're having to be there to assist the cow, and sometimes unfortunately it results in veterinary involvement as well, which we all know is a cost. So it also impacts on the cow, so I think we tend to forget about that. So those that have a difficult calving have an increased number of days open and reduced pregnancy rates. So this results in them being much more likely to be culled. And interestingly, again, I know this is an extreme example, but when I was in Florida, that was one of the biggest herds that I visited, and they had 42,000 sucklers. And they had 1 cowboy to every 1,000. So obviously calving cows and heifers was just not an option, and they had to get on with it. So I know that is an extreme, but it just does show that I think numbers of assisted calvings is maybe something we need to start looking at. Next slide, please, Chris. So an interesting study that was actually conducted last year looked at the risk factors for assisted calvings. So what they did was they got 84 herds across GB to record the number of assists that they did and identify kind of risk factors behind that. And interestingly, 18% of cows and heifers within that study did require assistance. And I must point out, the study only took into consideration those cows and heifers that did require assistance but produced a live calf. So this doesn't cover anywhere there was a stillbirth. So it's just all cesareans. It was live calves, born naturally. So what they found was that the most significant risk factor was actually cow body condition, and that was thin cows. So cows that were in body condition less than 2.5 had a much higher risk of calving difficulties. And I think that's something that's quite different to what we often think. So sometimes we try to thin cows down before calving in a hope that that will reduce calving difficulties. But actually this study shows it does completely the opposite. And that's because they think that those cows that are in body condition score less than 2.5 actually just lack the energy to push that calf out. And it also impacts on colostrum quality as well. And even more interesting is that the egg for the next pregnancy starts to develop in the last trimester of the previous pregnancy. So if you're thinning cows down and they're not in the correct body condition score, that will impact the development of that egg and will reduce your conception rates for the next calving season. So as we're approaching calving, do have a look at your rations and make sure they're okay for energy and protein. So the other risk factors that they identified were twins, which I think we all kind of know. You get a lot of malpresentations, breeds, and also heifers. So ideally, we don't want to be assisting any more than 5% of cows, and I'd say about 10% of heifers. But again, it is relevant to your system. So try and work out what your cows and heifers are doing, and then produce a realistic target for you. But again, I must reiterate, the first step to any of this is starting to record that data and analysing it. I think that's my slides, Chris. Thank you.
Perfect. No, that's great. Thank you very much. We'll just kind of get a couple questions in. We'll just try and sneak some in. So one question that has come through is, so obviously, managing or, getting heifers to calve at 24 months is probably going to include a certain element of nutritional management. Is it recommended, or is it normal to be feeding kind of concentrate feeds to heifers just to achieve that kind of target body weight?
Yeah, so I'd say no. A lot of the producers, even here, are able to calve their heifers at 2 without concentrates, but that does rely on you producing some really good quality silage. I think often the tricky part for us is that kind of first housing period when they've been weaned. We probably shove them in the shed that's maybe not the best. It isn't suitable for the cows and it isn't suitable for the finishing stock, so we maybe put them in a shed that isn't the best. Have a look at your feed barrier space, so make sure every animal can feed, and do weigh, so that will identify if there's any issues there. But again, it's just about making some good quality silage. So what, in my rough calculations, they really want to be growing 1 kilo per day whilst they're on the mother sucking, and then they want to grow about 0.7 kilos per day through that winter, which I think is achievable on most silage rations. But if you do find you haven't produced the silage that you want, we all have, unfortunately, we get the weather that prohibits that. So do top them up with a bit of concentrates. I actually did some calculations, and you're still much better off, even if you've got to feed them a bit of concentrate, you're still much better off calving them at 2 than calving them at 3.
Yeah, my kind of immediate background is in nutrition, so I was kind of almost want to answer that as well. But yeah, I think your foragers, they form the the baseline of any diet. So obviously trying to get them as better quality as you can will reduce the reliance on concentrates, effectively topping it up. So my advice, just like what Sarah said, is get it analyzed, and see where it's at, and if you don't think it's going to be good enough going into the winter, then yeah, you're gonna have to look at topping that up. So okay, perfect. So very kind of a little sneaky question. So for a limb cross heifer, would so for a 400, so weighing at 400 kilos for going to the bush, so would that be about right? Would that be so a 400 kilo limb cross heifer to serve her? If
yeah,
that 15
yeah. Yeah, so most are looking at about 420 kilos. Obviously, it's just dependent on what you think her mature cow weight will be. If you're not weighing your cows, have a look at if you've sent any to market, you know, if you've culled any your cows recently, have a look and see what they weighed when they went through the livestock market. That will probably give you a good indication of what your mature cow size is. But yeah, about 400 kilos does sound about right.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, cool. Right. Well, thank you very much. You know, again, we will try to have a bit of time at the end of the webinar for, you know, if anyone's got any other questions that kind of pop into their mind for either myself, Sarah, or Charlie, then, you know, we'll try to give you an opportunity at the end. Very, very conscious of time. That's my amazing time management skills. So what I wanted to just kind of move on to now was I'm going to kind of take the floor again and just do a bit of a kind of very quick now whistle stop tour of the Breedr app and just show you kind of what are the features and reports that are available to you this calving period. So the screen that you can see at the minute is the home screen of the app, and as you can see, there is a create animal / birth icon. So obviously the first feature I'm going to show you is how to log a birth. So once you click that icon, this page comes up. Now effectively what this page is you are creating the calf. So you are creating an animal in Breedr, and that is the calf that you're creating. We do have at the minute in development actually another workflow around logging births, which is actually you would select the dam first. So you would select the dam, so you'd select the cow and then you would log the calf kind of against her, but that's currently a bit of a work in progress. Another feature improvement we want is currently the passport ID field, you have to obviously manually type in the full passport number. We're working on a way of predicting what the passport ID could be. You know, it's just simply, you know, up the check digit from the previous passport number and obviously the animal ID number as well. So we are always constantly working on improvements, and that is currently what we're working on. Once you've kind of filled out all of that general animal information, the next screen that comes up is all to do with calculating or, you know, logging that birthing performance. So you've got the birth weight, the difficulty, presentation, size, abnormalities, and vigor. The importance of capturing this kind of data, again, you can do it on the phone, you can do it there and then in the shed. It works offline, so you can still capture it, sync back with Wi-Fi or 4G, and it all goes up to the cloud. And what that then does is if you log on to the web and you select a particular cow, so hopefully this video is working. If I select a cow and then I click on that offspring tab, then what it basically does is it lists all of the calves that particular cow has had. So I can see here that she's had 5 offspring, 3 male, 2 females. And what it does is it basically just lists, it takes all of that information that you've just captured on the mobile phone, and it presents it all here in this table. And effectively what this provides me is I can go into a particular cow and I just get an initial glance of any particular trends. So, you know, just like what Sarah was talking about in terms of birthing difficulty and assisted calvings, you know, I can see their birthing difficulty that, you know, this particular cow, it's been a bit moderate. There was a difficult one. There was a couple difficult ones. So actually the next time she throws a female calf, I might think twice about keeping it. You know, again, the vigor is not quite, I don't want them to, you know, get up and go. So a couple abnormal birth presentations. So it literally just right there and then I kind of can make a snapshot decision. And that's what it's all about. If I go on to the next, hopefully this is the next slide. Nope. Let me go on to this. live TV. It's great. Right. So what you can also do from logging that birth is what you can do with your breeder account is you can sync it with BCMS. So what that will do is, so if you go into your settings, so you can see here on the web, there's this little icon down in the bottom left, this little cog. In there, you can sync with BCMS, and you can enable BCMS push. So what that does is when you log that birth in the mobile app that I showed you earlier, if you come onto the web and click on the regulatory dashboard icon, so as you can see there, click on that, what it does is it pulls those movements across. So this example here is a birth registration. We also do it for movements on and off and also deaths. So, you know, if you're out during the day and you're logging births, you're creating them on the mobile. When you come into the evening, come onto the regulatory dashboard, there will be some movements there to approve. You just check all the information, click approve and send, and then you can confirm it. This has come up as a problem. That's purely because this is a test farm. So of course there's going to be a problem because it's not actually connected. But actually it's just a good demonstration that any problems, you know, registering movements, it does get highlighted. And actually, if you are logging it on Breedr within the time frame, but BCMS for whatever reason don't receive it, and you know they come back to you and they effectively want to penalize you, actually I would say 9 times out of 10, I think it's 10 times out of 10, come back to us, because when you approved it, we log that activity, that action, and that provides proof to BCMS that no, this farmer did approve it in the correct time for whatever reason. It might be our problem, it might be BCMS problem as well. So, you know, we do have safeguards in place. I know BCMS movements is quite an important area. So we've got a, you know, we can support you, is basically what I'm trying to say. So so that is, yeah, with birth registrations. Going back onto the mobile, this is, so from the home page, I clicked on my cattle icon, and that just gives you a list of all of your animals. You can also organize them into groups, so you could have your heifers, you could have your cows. When I click into a particular animal, I get all of their information screen, and if I keep scrolling down, then I see all of the activities that I've logged against them previously. So you get that whole activity history list. And effectively what I can do from here is, if I clicked on the plus icon, I can log an activity against that cow. I can also log activities to a number of cows all in one go as well. So you don't have to do it one by one. But particular activities that we have for breeding are all of those there on the screen. So, you know, logging those activities is really simple, really straightforward. And what we then do, so again, like what I was saying earlier, the whole point of Breedr is, you know, on the mobile phone, you're out in the farm, you log an AI, you log a PD test activity, whatever it is, you see a cow bulling, capture it on the phone right there and then. We then take that data, and this is then where we put it into reports. So this is one of our kind of biggest reports. It's called the breeding KPI report. And basically what it does is it is split into those 4 key periods, the service, PD, calving and weaning. And for each section, it details and it calculates all of those KPI targets. And it's split into service years. So what you can do is you can obviously compare year on year, but you can obviously also benchmark against you know, AHDB targets for a number of the KPIs as well. And for each section there are different charts. So if we focus on the calving in particular then, so these are all of the KPIs that we calculate based on all of those activities that I showed you on the mobile screen a couple slides ago. And obviously the key ones that we've been discussing tonight. So right at the very bottom, assisted calving. So every time you log that calving performance, if there's an assisted calving, a difficult calving, that kind of populates this percentage down here. We've got the heifer age at calving. We've got the calving interval. So again, that was quite an important KPI. And then again, that mortality. So it's, and as well as a number of other different KPIs as well. So again, the idea is in your phone, in your pocket, just capture those key data points on farm, and then that will populate this report. And we'll also say that we can import historic information as well. So if you've got Excel spreadsheets of PD tests and various other bits of data, we do have a tool on the web to import Excel spreadsheets, so you can, you don't have to start from scratch from today and have to wait 3 years to actually get some data to analyze. We can import historic data. So again, just on that calving period, a couple charts to show. So this is showing the percent of cows calving the first 3 weeks, the blue chart bars versus the calving period. So, I can see here that actually over the years, the percent of my cows calving the first 3 weeks has got worse and worse, and my calving period has got longer and longer. So again, the idea of this is you can see it, right there and then, and I can intervene now. And again, the idea with SucklerClub is, we can provide the links and the contacts, via Sarah, via AHDB. We can help you overcome these problems or issues, or get back to where you should be trying to achieve those targets. And then again, likewise, share your experience with Charlie, and and learn off each other. So that's that one. And then the final chart for the calving side is this chart just shows the calving interval. So calving interval of target 365 days is actually made up of the gestation period, but also the days to conception. So what this is doing is this is actually showing right, well, I want to achieve 365-day calving interval, but is it my gestation length that's maybe too long, or is it my days to conception post calving? Am I taking too long to get my cows to conceive after calving? So again, that's what it's showing. So this is part of the breeding KPI report, is based on a average herd level. So it's all on averages all of the cows. So it gives you, your herd status. The dam offspring performance report is a bit more granular, and that delves into the individual animals. So what this chart is showing you at the top is the average offspring daily live weight gain by dam. So I can see this cow at the top, the average daily live weight gain of their offspring is 1.38 versus, some at the bottom at 0.7. So again, it just gives me that initial insight into, right, well, my top 20% of my cows for growth rate, I'm going to breed from them. Maybe I'm going to do something to the bottom 20%. And again, this chart shows the same, but daily live weight gain by age. But this table at the bottom, again, is exactly the same principle. But what it does is it actually takes all of those KPIs from the breeding KPI report, and it shows them for individual animals. So again, if we focus on the calving tab, so they're all in tabs, we focus on calving. What we've got on the left-hand side is each individual cow, the number of calves that she's had, the age at first calving that she was, and then, of her calves, how many has she calved successfully? Has she not? How many of them have been assisted? How many stillbirths and abortions? And then again, it's her average calving interval. So I could see here that this cow at the top, number 1047, she's had 5 calves, of which she's successfully calved, all of them, that's great, but actually 50% of them have been assisted. So, again, I can make a decision on that. You can see there's that little down arrow there as well. So I can sort each column by, you know, ascending or descending order. So again, if I, as my business, if I'm really targeting, right, I really want age at first calving, I want assisted calving, then I can sort and you know, I can select cows based on you know, exactly what kind of criteria I want. So that was a really quick kind of whistle stop tour, I'm afraid, of the Breedr app. I mean, there are a couple of questions just kind of based on that really quickly cover. So login body condition score, we do have an activity that it does exist in the Breedr app. You can log a body condition score against it. It's part of the data analytics. Off body condition score is a bit limited at the minute, but again, it's something that we want to, you know, we want to improve on. So you know, please keep bringing that kind of feedback in. Yeah, so I kind of, based on that, I'll probably finish there and pass just back over to Charlie just to kind of finish off tonight's webinar by just kind of explaining where she's at with this year's calving.
Cheers, Chris. Yeah, so I think you probably gauged from us earlier that we are completely new to this. Like, we have always sold store cattle. We don't weigh. We're just investing in our first set of scales, and you know, we're really starting from the beginning with this. But our key aims for this calving are building up that bank of data. We do have historical data on who's, you know, on like whose calf is who and whatnot, but we don't have those details about calving ease, calf figure, and things like that. And that's the data I'm really looking forward to inputting, to then using to make our decisions on our replacement heifers. We do have quite a continental cow now. I am very conscious of losing the maternal traits because we do have good maternal traits. You know, we're not the efficiency. Yes, Sarah might disagree when I say we've got good maternal traits, because our efficiency is nowhere near what it should be. But we do have, you know, we don't have to assist calvings. They are milky cows. We're a little bit out of getting a calf every 365 days, but it's things like that that I really want to build on. So it's just building up that bank, really. That's our main aim for this calving, and using that to go forward. We know that the data we yield will directly affect the decisions that we make in the future now, whether that not only on the heifer choices that we make, but also on the bulls that we purchase. You know, do we keep on with the way that we're purchasing bulls now, or do we select a maternal bull as such for breeding our replacements from, or, you know, how do we work that? So yeah, I think we're very conscious of finding the balance between maternal and terminal traits, and listening to Sarah speaking earlier is really good to kind of reaffirm that what we're doing and what we're looking towards is the right way to go. So yeah, that's us, really.
Perfect. No, that's great. Because again, kind of correct me if I'm wrong, Charlie, because I'm probably going to get this wrong now. You are finishing your cattle, or you are selling at stores. Yeah. Okay. I thought I'd get that one. Awesome.
We do a couple that we finish, maybe, I think we finished about 20 last year, that we put in a mixture of going through beef boxes that we sell locally to local consumers, and then a couple that we fattened and put into the market, but only because we had a bit more shed space last year. So just playing about with it, really. But we definitely know that selling on the store market is what suits our business, because if we were going to go down the finishing route, then we'd have to be looking at more closely at our feed. At the moment, we're very low maintenance. We're just feeding rolled oats. It depends between rolled oats and rolled barley. Because of the arable side, we grow it all ourselves, and basically we feed what's worth less. So it's been oats this year, and our own home-grown silage. So if we were finishing, we'd definitely need to be reconsidering that ration and growing maize or something, and it's not something that any of us are interested in. So
yeah, perfect. I mean, just I knew you were finishing something. I knew there was something in there. A question actually, it kind of popped up earlier in the webinar, and I think now's an opportunity just to ask it. You kind of mentioned earlier that you obviously moved away from dairy. The question kind of coming through was whether you had any sort of kind of Yoni's issues, and or did you have any sort of plan to kind of overcome that, or mitigate against Yoni's?
So we started, like I said, we started the beef herd back in the late 80s by buying in the dairy cross. As with a plan for Yoni's, I don't know if there was one. I'm not sure. I was but a twinkle in my father's eye at that point. So yeah, I'm not sure. We do blood tests now, so we'll select a handful to blood test every kind of 4 or 5 years, and thankfully, touch wood, we've never picked up Yoni's. So and then we vaccinate for BVD. So but it is something we are very conscious now. Like we've not bought in, bar the bulls, we don't buy in. We are operating a closed herd now. And it's definitely something that we've thought about more in the past few years. I like to think that since I've come home from uni and not come home from uni, but come back to the farm, it's kind of little things that I pointed out. Like we were having frozen colostrum off a local dairy farm, and we've stopped that now just because of the Yoni's risk. So yeah, touch wood, we're all right, but we could pick it up in a cow that we blood test in a couple of years' time. So yeah, we'll see. Cross that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah, but again, it's that I think the key message from that is you are still testing. So making sure that you know whether it is still there or not, and identify any
and our bulls we're buying privately as well. So we've bought from the same breeder for since we've had Sims, and that's not me saying that we'll always buy from him, but it's worked very well for us. So yeah, we know where we're buying the bulls from. Yeah,
perfect. Yeah, again, very important. Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much. That kind of leaves me to open a little bit of discussion. So kind of a couple questions that are firing around. Sarah, this one is kind of particularly aimed towards you. The question is, does the kind of the data that you've seen and you've collected, is there a certain breed or a crossbreed that is kind of effectively the best to breed from? What is kind of what's your recommendation on that?
Well, that's always a hard one. With working for AHDB, obviously I have to be impartial, and I think it is true that there's much variation within a breed as there is between breeds. However, just going on what Charlie said about the dairy cross sucklers, interestingly, when I was traveling, I didn't see one dairy cross cow that was being used as a suckler cow, and I think that's because of a lot of the things that Charlie's pointed out. So your health problems that you might encounter, and also we've got a dairy herd at home as well, and it's often the cows that we have problems with that we put to the beef bull, and unfortunately it's them that then go to the suckler herd. So I think where we can breed our own beef replacements, and if we can focus on those maternal traits, so the milkiness and the fertility, there'll be no need to rely on the dairy industry to breed our replacements.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, I kind of hope that answers your question. Another kind of another thing that has come through, and again, Sarah, I know you did kind of mention it earlier. Just trying to find the actual question, but it was basically okay, yeah. So the question that's come through has been focused on effectively the environmental credentials of feedlots. One of the biggest positives, strengths that UK producers have is, we are a very good country at growing grass, and that's the kind of beef that we can produce. And obviously there's the environmental positivity that comes around that. Do you think, and I suppose I'm going to kind of ad lib on this question a little bit, is is there, improving fertility, is there a, an environment, what is the environmental impact that improving fertility and achieving these kind of targets can have on effectively the environmental carbon credentials of a suckler farm? And I suppose that just kind of maybe that bolsters our carbon credentials. So didn't know whether you could expand on that a bit more.
Yeah, so the only piece of research really that I know of that's been done in this country was conducted by the stabilisers. I think it was last year or the year before, and they actually found that focusing on those maternal traits and improving them, so like your age at first calving, your fertility, your mature cow size, has the ability to cut carbon emissions by over 10%. So it really has a big impact. And if those cows are milky as well, their offspring, you're likely to be able to get them off farm quicker. So again, that's a huge saving. So I always think any improvements in, I hate the word efficiency, but really result in decreases in carbon emissions and benefits for the environment as well. So it really is a win-win situation. I know the question asked about how it relates to other countries, and unfortunately I don't know enough about it to comment on that, so I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think just the way that things are going, I think the carbon, or not necessarily the carbon, but the emissions impact that our systems are having are going to be under more and more scrutiny going forward. So if improving fertility is going to help us financially from a business point of view whilst achieving environmental targets, I think it kind of is a bit of a win-win. Exactly,
Chris.
Perfect. Okay. Right. I'm just going to just end with one more little question, hopefully a little one. Again, probably more aimed at you again, Sarah. Apologies. But so a cow calving down at 2 years old, what is the kind of nutritional requirement after she's calved then, to make sure that she gets back cycling and and gets back into reproductive production compared to an animal who is calving at 3?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And when I first started my Nuffield, I asked farmers in the UK why kind of we weren't calving at 2, and that was one of the barriers. The main barriers that they said was the difficulty getting those heifers, once they have calved, to calve again within 365 days, because we are asking a lot of them, so they're still growing, they're having to lactate, and then we're asking them to reproduce as well. So there's a lot going on for them, and they'll actually only partition energy towards that growth and lactation before finally partitioning it to reproduction. So really the key is nutrition, like the person's saying. So if we can get them in good body condition, so really they need to be calving at body condition score around 3 at calving. And then that stands them in a much better chance to get back in calf within those 365 days. It's much harder to try and get that heifer to gain weight after calving before bulling than it is getting her in the correct weight before calving, if that makes sense. So the key really is getting them in that right body condition score before calving. Then when they do calve, they do need some TLC, so get them out onto your best pastures, give them that preferential treatment, keep them as a separate batch so they're not having to fight against the mature cows, and really look after them. But like you say, those heifers will have a naturally longer period between calving and coming back into bulling again. So nutrition and body condition score is key, particularly pre-calving. That is the golden nugget, really.
And that's probably where people don't quite think, do they? They think it's probably, oh right, she's calved now, I need to start managing it. Well, actually, there's potential for that's a bit too late.
That's it. And like I said, earlier, if if that heifer isn't in the right body condition, it'll also impact that egg as well. So that will naturally lead to lower conception rates. So nutrition before calving is absolutely key, and particularly protein. Just check that's right, because obviously that'll have a big impact on colostrum quality as well. But as I said, in that AHDB manual, it is all there. So go have a look at that.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you very much. I think just kind of very quickly on that note, as Breedr goes forward and we develop, we obviously the feed side of things, we will be building that into the app. And also just off the back of that comment earlier about body condition score, yes, you can log it. But we know, and I, as part of my role, I know that there's a lot more we in the app need to do in terms of, analyzing the the results of body condition score. So that just kind of leaves me massive thank you both to Sarah and Charlie for joining me tonight. Massive thank you to everyone who joined the webinar and stayed for actually what ended up being half an hour longer than I kind of planned, but hopefully that's just credit to the quality of the speakers and the questions that have been coming through. Is what we try to promote, a bit of a discursive event. So yeah, I won't keep you any longer. I did mention at the very beginning of the webinar that there would be a potential little kind of prize going out to one of the viewers who sent the best social media post. There is definitely a gilet winging its way to one of our users. The only way I can describe their post is it's a picture of a pint, a tablet, watching the Breedr webinar whilst in the bath. So yeah. Cracking effort. Yeah, love that. So yeah, there's definitely a gilet on its way to you. So and we'll be sharing that around. So yeah, that's awesome. Thank you very much. So yeah, cool. Thank you very much, everyone. I'll bid you a farewell and a good night. And yeah, we'll see you all again for the next episode of SucklerClub.
Sorry, Chris, is it just all right if I just mention Shape the Future?
Oh yes, of course. Yeah.
Finish. So I'll be very, very quick. I don't know if you've heard, but there's a vote at AHDB happening in April, and that's going to give you access to say what you think are the challenges within your sector, and also where you think your levy should be spent, so the different priorities. To be able to vote in April, you first need to register, and you need to register by the 31st of March. So please do that. I know we're heading into a really busy period, so do that now. You can do it on the website. And I just think, yeah, go ahead, have your say. At the end of the day, it's your levy, so it's really important you have a say. Thank you very much, Chris.
No problem. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, very important. Yeah, the great work that AHDB do, and obviously funded by you. So yeah, that's great. Awesome. Well, thank you very much again. And yeah, I'll leave you to the rest of what is your evening. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.